Hello everyone. Today we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Qasis Amsalu Tafarra. In this program, we will dive into their newest book, The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church Over the Centuries. So many people have purchased it and are reading it right now. This is a great book for anyone wanting to learn about the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo faith, and we will talk about the history, the worship, and the doctrine of our faith described in detail in the book. So just to give you a little background of our guest, Qasis Dr. Amsalu Tafarra is a distinguished Ge'ez philologist and theologian known for his extensive work in Ethiopian studies, Ge'ez, manuscripts, and biblical scholarship. He earned his PhD through a joint program between Addis Ababa University and the University of Florence. He has also conducted postdoctoral research as a Humboldt Scholar at Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich. Father Amsalu has published extensively in academic journals and authored books. He was an assistant professor of philology at Addis Ababa University and lectured in theology at Holy Trinity Theological College. Currently based in the USA, he continues his research and teaches at Estros Theological Seminary at a voluntary basis. Qasis Dr. Amsalu, a devoted ecclesiastical leader and the son of a priest, began his journey of faith and service at a young age, demonstrating remarkable dedication from the start. After graduating from Holy Trinity Theological College in Addis Ababa University, he served as a chief secretary of the evangelical and missionary department at the head office of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. He is now the administrator of St. Gabriel Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church in Miami, Florida. Alongside his many impactful church missions, he is passionately committed to youth ministry, next generation in faith, guiding and inspiring them. Father, it's truly an honor to have you here with us. If you can first start by introducing the book and telling us some of the main messages from the book, that would be great.
In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
So if we can just go straight to the questions, if we can talk a little about the book and like the central message of the book, what was the purpose of writing this book and what was the main message of this book?
Thank you very much. The book, as it's just stated, is to give a panoramic introduction about the Ethiopian Church, about the history, about the worship, and about the doctrine of the Church overall, and giving specific basic information and basic teachings about the Church, addressed to the, especially for the English-speaking community, addressing to the youth, the young adults, and everyone who is interested to read our church history, about the history of the worship, and about the doctrine or the dogmatic phase of the church in English. So that is the main idea, and the book has about basically 2 sections, divided into 14 chapters, but it has 3 basic components, like the history part, one part, and the other part is, or the other concern is the worship part, and the last and the vast one is the doctrinal part, which contains the dogmatic natures, the dogmatic parts of the church. So that is the thing. And in the first section, the book aims to address the church history since its establishment of the church. But before giving the establishment, I try to give it the background of the church, tracing back in the Old Testament time, which is basically mentioned in the book, in the first book of Kings, the first Kings, chapter 10, the visit of the Queen of Sheba to the Israeli king, King Solomon, and that is the biblical foundation which was mentioned in the Bible, and also this story is well narrated in the book of Kivrenegest, which is the glory of kings, and that is well illustrated in the book of Kivrenegest, and which is part of the church history foundation, which we say. And from that, and I just tried to give the background about how the phase of believing in one God or monotheism was practiced in Ethiopia, even before Christianity. So that is one point. And the other point is, the Christian phase came to Ethiopia in the first century itself, by 34 AD, by the Queen of Candace, as is mentioned in the book of Acts chapter 8. So, in 34 AD, the Christianity came to Ethiopia. So that's the foundation of the church, and the good news of the Bible came to Ethiopia, and that the book gives that as an introduction, and it continues all the way how the church was flourished in the 4th century, coming by the contribution of the Abba Salama Fruminatos. So the 4th century is not the time where Christianity was entered to Ethiopia. No, that is the church was flourished, and the bishopric service was started by the 4th century. But the phase was Christianity or Christian baptism was came, as it's mentioned in the Bible, since the 1st century during the apostolic era, by the 34 AD, by the eunuch of Queen of Candace. So that's the first chapter. That's what, and the unique contribution of the Frumentius Abba Salama is mentioned in the book, and how it works, and there are lots of things. And in the 5th century, the coming of the 9 saints is also mentioned. Tesatu Kudusan, or the 9 saints, came to Ethiopia from Greco-Roman Empire, all the way from the west to our country, Ethiopia. So, thanks to them, they give another new dimension for the Ethiopian Christianity. Since Christianity was there already, but their arrival gives a new dimension for the church.
I think it's also called the second Christian.
Exactly, second evangelization.
Yeah.
Second evangelization, we call it. And because already Christianity was already then practiced, then their arrival or their advent was gives the chance for the Ethiopian church, and it's the second chance, so that it was well flourished all over Ethiopia. And one new thing which was done by the 9 saints was the establishment of the monasteries or gadamat, and they of course other things are also done, like the missionary activity, the evangelism, the translation of the Bible, already since the time of the Old Testament time, and already practiced or done by Abba Salama from in the 3rd century, in the 4th century. But the 9 saints, they completed the already existed biblical translation book already. It was completed now. Then they added another books. So they brought the monastic books, the books of Pachomius or Pachomis, and the books of Cyril or Kyrillos, and the Physiologos, and other books were translated by the 9 saints in the 5th century, which was not the chance they come to Ethiopia before that. So that is the new thing, and the 9 saints did all these things to Ethiopia. So this was already done. And
if I may ask, how were they able to? They had a lot of impact in Ethiopia, but how were they able to come to Ethiopia? If you can talk a little about the Chalcedonian and the non-Chalcedonian.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, that's the main reason. the main reason for the advent of the 9th, the coming of the 9th from the Greco-Roman Empire to Ethiopia is, because of the phase. Their phase was, they are non-Chalcedonians, meaning the Council of Chalcedon in 451 decided that Christ has two natures, and the 9 saints, they opposed the decisions of the councils of Chalcedon, 451. The Oriental Orthodox churches, meaning the Coptic Church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the Armenian Church, the Indian Church, and the Syrian Church, all these were anti-Chalcedonian or non-Chalcedonian churches, or Oriental churches, we could say. So since these 9 saints were belong to the Oriental family, and they are non-Chalcedonian, they reject the councils or the decisions of the Council of Chalcedon 451. So for that reason, they were being persecuted. There are two options. Either they have to accept the Council of Chalcedon, the decision, or they need to escape. So need to be persecuted. So they escaped that, and they came to Ethiopia as a to get a religious refugee. And they started preaching here, serving here, giving the missionary activities in Ethiopia. And thankfully, Ethiopia, since it's a Christian country, so the Ethiopia gave them the refugee, and Ethiopia became the safe haven for the 9 saints, so that they can freely practice their Oriental Orthodox faith, and they practiced the non-Chalcedonian dogma or non-Chalcedonian religion they practiced. So they practiced them here in Ethiopia in the Orthodox Tewahedo Church. So they preached that, and they also flourished the monasteries. That's a very, very great contribution of the 9 saints is they started monasticism, Igadam Hiyot.
I'm assuming they had to stay in Ethiopia for a long time.
For a long time, more than nearly about 50 years, or
so they learned
more than half a century
language.
They lived in Ethiopia.
Okay.
And most of them, they flourished, they located in Aksum, in Aksum surroundings. They founded their own monasteries. And in Aksum, they lived about 1.5 years, right? So it's mentioned here. And they started working and living and practicing there. And they did great, massive things. So this book give specifically every saint what they did and where did they found the monastery, and what is their day of commemoration, by the way. So there are lots of things. So it is about the 9 saints. Then after that, the rise of the Saint Yarid for the Ethiopian Church gives a great, very great era, and that gives the Ethiopian Church a new phase for the service and the worship and overall the spiritual life of the church. So the advent of Saint Yarid gives the church a new life, a new service, everything. So the invention of the Yaridic chants or hymnody or zema, invented by Saint Yarid, gives the church a new life, so that the church has a new form of worship, which was celebrating and worshiping God, believing in the Holy Trinity. So Saint Yarid invented the chanting or zema in 3 modes: the Ge'ez zema, the Ezl zema, and the Ezl zema. Interestingly, in the book, I just try to discuss what is the meaning of the Ge'ez zema, the Ezl zema, or the Ararai chanting, and there are theological meanings about that. So it's the first part of the book discuss all this and gives them the definition. The second part of this book is about worship of the church. So the first one is the history, which I mentioned. And by the way, the Ethiopian church history has, since it is more than 2,000 years old, so it's impossible to discuss everything of history in this brief time, but try to give highlights in that thing. And I try to discuss different challenges what the church, facing during the last, since as it says, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church over the centuries. So during the centuries, the Ethiopian Church has, faced it faces the challenges. But thankfully, by the grace of the Lord, the church, passes through different challenges, and since the church is a victorious church, and the Holy Spirit, by the grace and the providence of the Holy Spirit, every temptation challenge was just surpassed. So the church, still continues in giving a vibrant service even until time, and it continues until the end of the world. So by the way, the church also gives. It is one of the greatest number, by the way, as far as the Ethiopian Church followers are concerned. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church members or Christians are one of the greatest or the largest number that has from the Oriental churches, and one of the greatest Christian churches in the world, by the way. So try to discuss all this. And the other part, in the worship part, the book also discusses about the different forms of the church, like the tzalot part, like the sigdet or the worship, and the tzalot, the prayer, the prostration, the qaddas, the liturgy, and celebrating the feasts or ba'alat al-makbar, and the mahalet, the sa'atats. All these are called the Ethiopian Church forms or worships, or forms of worship. So the book also discusses all this. And the other part, and the doctrines, the book also discusses the basic doctrines of the church. The basic doctrines of the church, starting from the existence of God, and how do we prove, or how do you know whether God exists or not. So the book poses different questions and try to logical answers, shortly and briefly. So that's it. After that, the existence of God and the 5 pillars of mystery are just discussed one by one. So this is the general overview of the book in all. It has about 14 chapters overall. That's it.
Yeah, and when I first started reading it, what really intrigued me was the history part, because I've always been interested in learning about the Orthodox history, and I have, but I didn't remember like the names, the different names, for example, the names of the 9 saints, or Abba Salama, their original name, and how they came to Ethiopia, how they became, everything else that is like detailed about the history. That was very interesting to learn.
True. Yeah. So the readers can go more. When they go deep in read, I think they will get some basic and very important information, so that it's just new. So the purpose is to give the church knowledge, the church faith, the church history, so that also to inform that, by the way, this basically the main idea of writing this book is just to help the believers.
Yeah.
But also it I think helps the non-believers also, even the non-Christians, so that they can fully understand what the church really believes, and because there are lots of myths and there are lots of distorted ideas, so that if anyone who can read from the church, so this is the thing which the church believes, and this is the history of the church, and there are lots of references, by the way, references in the church books and also academic articles, and so all these things are just also so. This is very impactful, of course, for the believers, for the youth and the young adults, but also the non-believers, the non-Christians, so that they can understand what is there about the church, what is there, what is written. So I think it will be beneficiary for the thing.
That's definitely a great introduction, a great way to learn about the faith.
Yes.
Even for those that are currently studying theology, this is a great book, and even for those that are not familiar with Orthodox and want to learn, it has a little bit about everything, because it encompasses the history, the dogma of the church, the worship, how we should worship, a lot of different things in one book, which I really think is needed right now.
Very good. As you said, yes, that's needed, right?
Yeah.
So every single Christian should know this about the church.
Exactly.
So if he's a believer or a Christian, to know his own or her own belief. So if he or she is non-Christian, okay, to know about the Ethiopian church, what they believe, what we believe. So that is, it's very, I think, required or necessary, mandatory to know the basic things of our church about ourselves.
For sure.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write this book?
What's that?
What inspired you to write this book?
Well, this is very important question, and I think, first of all, I was thinking to do this kind of things in organized way since a long time ago, but God helped me to do this, so it gives me the chance, since I just started teaching, this course in the seminary, and also since I'm just giving this service for the non-Ethiopians and Habesha people, especially where I live in Florida and other cities in virtually. So there are lots of people who would like to join the Ethiopian church. So while I just give them the catechetical teachings or the lessons to be a Christian, so they were asking, what is the reference material for this in the life? So that makes me, it just honestly it pushes me, okay, to contribute on this. So this one aspect. The other aspect, to see the limitation, the scarcity of the materials. We don't have not that much books or reference materials in English written. So we have books in English, of course. We have books and materials in Amharic, of course, and other languages, even though it's just not that much as needed. But in English, when you come to it, it's just less effort is done. So I just put myself, let me try my own best, so that if there is something to need to be improved, I think someone can improve, or I may myself even can improve it the next time. But the initial let it be. When I am just planning writing this book, I try to have a survey or literature review. There are very few books written but their theme and their idea is almost different. So not in this way. So that's why I just try to come to this idea. So it's better to write, to give the general ideas, to give the general introductions, to give the readers, preferably everything for the reader, so that they can get, just like a buffet. Right? They can read about history, they can read about the Abinette school, they can read about this and that. More importantly, about the dogma and doctrine of the church. So that makes me inspired to write the book for this reason. Yes.
Yeah, and as I was reading, I realized there are a lot of footnotes that we can refer back to.
Exactly.
Whether it's from the Bible or whether it's
from scholarly articles,
someone else that's written about that, we can, if we're interested in a specific topic, let's say specific history, then we can go back to the footnote and read more about it. Which
footnote,
really like.
and also even the bibliography, the reference section as well.
Yes, exactly.
So when I just try to discuss something, in order to not to distract the thing, I make it just in footnotes, so that the readers can get these benefits. I think that will be very important for that. So for more, if the reader is very interested, so I give also further reading. So that gives also additional impact, so that for further researchers, if they need to read about this, read this and that, so that they can refer and they can go that.
Exactly. Yeah. And how were you able to find time throughout, like, all the responsibilities that you have? You are a professor. You're also a professor at Estros. You do a lot of things. You have a lot of responsibilities. You have your family. You have kids. There's a lot of responsibilities. And how were you able to find time to write this book? And this isn't your first book. This is your 6th book. So if you can tell us a little about that.
Yes. Honestly speaking, God gave us, 24 hours a day. So God is gracious. So we need to be, we need to be gracious too. I mean, we need to focus and we need to try to.
That's true.
And I don't see. I just effectively used my time. I don't say that, but I'm trying. You know, of course, as you said, there are lots of responsibilities. You know, the church service there. You know, the family responsibilities. You know, social responsibilities. You know, there are lots of things in academic responsibilities as well. But you know, if we try to allocate our time, and if we try to focus, we need to. I think of course, first things should be first, right? So, what are the priorities first? Then you know, giving the timeline for yourself. So, I think it will be nice. And one thing which needs to be, I think, practiced is, you know, we need to limit ourselves from, you know, something which is irrelevant things should be avoided. This time, I think, for young adults, even parents, lots of time will be used by the social media, and you know, some irrelevant things. So we need to give less time for this kind of things, and we need to give focus on the major things. I think we can have lots of time, so we can save. And of course, we need to give our time as well for prayer, for, you know, spiritual prosperity, and for spiritual, you know, we have to give time for reading, and also for our, we need to read many things, of course, so that I think as long as we can do that, and I think we can manage our time. So that is not exaggerated. I just try to effectively use my old time, but I'm trying. But still there are lots of challenges as well. There are lots of challenges, of course. As a church father, by the way, there may be without even a schedule. We don't work on a schedule, by the way. As a church father, honestly speaking, almost 24/7 we are on service. The church service is, we know, it's just day and night. That's good. One thing. The other thing, faithful Christians, they may call or they may visit, even without appointment. They may have, you know, lots of issues, you know. So so we must visit. You know, there are patient. There may be patients. There may be, you know, those mothers just give birth for new babies, so we need to visit them. There may be, you know, those who just missed their beloved ones. We need to visit them. There are funeral services. There are qaddases. There are funerals. There are lots of things, and above all, there are, you know, family issues we need to discuss. There are, you know, pastoral services, like, you know, the confession sessions. There are lots of things. So, honestly speaking, this may, you know, is a challenge, but still we need to try to, you know, give a space for, try to manage everything, so that we can achieve what's expected from us. That's right. So as a priest, and as, you know, as someone who has to write, so I need to do something. So that's my attempt. I don't know if I'm just successful, thankfully. If not, I need to improve myself, so that continuing to be more successful in the future. I'm trying my best. That's it.
I think this book is a great success.
We thank God for that. If that's successful, all glory to be God. That's good.
And what guided you throughout, like, writing this book? I'm sure you might have faced a lot of challenges. What kept you going, whether it's your family members or a scripture that you kept on reminding yourself? What kept you going?
Yes. Okay, it's a very good point. Okay, there are lots of things which I can get a lesson every day, by the way. So I may get, you know, a lesson from even the kids, from the children which I'm teaching, from the deacons, from the youth, from the college students which I'm just consulting them. So there are lots of things, and lots of information from the books, of course, from the church fathers, and from observations what I can see. I think it's very important to grasp all these things. But above all, there are lots of written information, written resources, so that I need to consult them all. We have lots of gized resources. We have lots of books and, you know, references, so that all information can be gathered. So we need to sit down and to analyze, and it's very important. And the other thing, as a challenge, there may be, first of all, time constraint is there, and sometimes, you know, family responsibilities are there. So I have 2 kids, I have a family, So there are lots of things. So I just took much of my kids' time, my children's time. So that's one challenge. But I am thankfully they understand my situation, and they are helpful. So my wife is just very helpful. My kids are very helpful, and I may even consult them. I'm asking them what's this and that, and they will. So they encourage me, and they will. I just learn from them. By the way, in order to understand the youth. So I just my first or immediate people around me are just my kids. So my our first son is a deacon, and he's a high schooler, so he has good mind. So he just discusses me. So I learn from lots of things from him. And his youngest sister is just she's they are doing this. So I get a lesson from them, lots of things, and of course encouragement also from my wife as well, and from the people around me, and the church fathers and the church scholars, which are the great helpful and resourceful church fathers around me. So there are lots of fathers, by the way, starting from the archbishops, their graces, and the church fathers, the church administrators, the priests, the deacons, the theologians, and the Abinat or church scholars. So I just call them, I consult them, I ask them if I just came to know if something which needs to puzzle me. And we discuss on that. So I get a lesson, lots of things from them. So that helps me a lot.
Yeah. So specifically for the diasporas, people living outside of Ethiopia, what do you think will inspire them, or like what this book, what does it offer, like a unique perspective on a specific thing? What do you think?
That's a very good question. The diaspora youth and the non-Ethiopian compatriots who are interested to know about Ethiopian church. I think this book, it's not an advertisement, but this book is a very helpful material, I would say, for two things. Number one, it's written in English. It's not only in English, because there are lots of English materials we know, but this is something written about their beloved church. By the way, the Caribbeans and Afro-Americans, they because of their love of Ethiopian church, without understanding the Ge'ez and the Amharic, they attend the Qadasi. They just been baptized with very little material. But because their more important thing is their faith, so they have a really deep faith, which is an astonishing thing. That's a great thing, by the way. But with that readiness, and if they get something which is very important for them, to get this kind of very basic information about their beloved church, about their faith, about the worship, about the reasons why we do these things, and if it's written in a very handy way, I think it's a very good, great idea, and so that's a good thing. So those who are just living here raised and born here in U.S., the youth, the young adults of Ethiopian Orthodox Church origins, and for those who just non-Ethiopians or non-Habesha people, but they would like to know about their beloved Ethiopian church, I think this would really greatly helpful, and it will be nice, and it will give. This is the initial, so they can ask the church fathers for more information if they would like. But reading this and try to understand this, that will be very initial point. So that will be the great thing they can have by their own. This is a thing which I would say. So a great help for them, especially for the English-speaking community here in the diaspora. By the way, my target was those who are speaking in English, or those who are just reading. At least they have, if someone who has reading knowledge of English can read this book easily. Those who are living in US or in Canada or in Australia or in Europe or in Africa or in Middle East, I think even though their language is French, even though if their language is Germany or the German or Italian or or in Arabic language. So I think English language is the second language. So this is the best option, I would say. And if time allows us, I think also it's good for us to prepare this kind of book also in French, also in Italian, also in German, right? Also in other European languages, also in Arabic, why not? So that will be, I think, so. But English is the basic, and I think the initial and the springboard. This I would say.
Yeah. Do you have any future projects or future books that you are thinking of?
A lot.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, if God give us a time and the opportunity, I need to serve more and more, and I try to read. Write a book, second part of this, like for example.
Okay.
And also there are lots of church issues. Church subjects and lessons which I can contribute. That we'll see. So there are lots of things. For example, there are chapters here. So every chapter can be a book.
Exactly. I was thinking about.
For example, as I said, there are about 14 chapters.
Yeah.
Meaning, we can write even 14 books, even 14 projects in the future, if time. Even more. There are lots of things. So God willing.
Okay. So will there be a second part of the book?
Not recently, not immediately, but that's my plan. Yeah,
that's
my plan. Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. So, speaking about the older generation, what do you think, like in terms of like their role? What role can they play to either inspire the younger generation or like help the younger generation get more information? Because one thing that we sometimes hear is that there isn't enough information that is in English, like we mentioned earlier. So, what do you think that the older generation, maybe it could be priests? What can they do? What role can they play to like in the younger generation?
That's a good point. And honestly speaking, the older generation or the parents, I would say, have great opportunity. They have great responsibility to bridge, the future generation in this generation, because unless the parents and the priestess, the current priestess, we're just the church servants, unless we just work hard right now, starting from now, and teaching our children and guiding them, the future generations, honestly speaking, the next generation will be in danger, in question. So we need to equip, well organized, and teach them and coach them, the youth, so that we can have the future priestess, we can have the future bishops, we can have even the future patriarchs from our children. So we need to start working on that. So bringing that and getting this into solution, the preparation should start today itself. Even we should start yesterday, even, by the way. Yesterday is already past, so no worries about that. We just get ready and get a lesson from yesterday and start it today. And I would say this kind of preparation is a good point to fill the gap and to bridge the gap, so that it paves the way for the future. So in the future, to help to empower the future generation, we need to have this kind of materials. Not only this, lots of materials in all aspects. Number one. Number two, the parents and the priestess, we need to be helpful for our kids. We should not be judgmental. We should not be set aside. We should not push them. We need to be part of them. We need to encourage them to study, to know about their faith, and we need to sit down and we need to discuss about it, and we have to try to understand their mind, and we have to answer their questions if there are something which we don't understand really, and try to understand what's the matter and what should we improve, what we can help. By the way, and as far as I see from my until my current church service, there are lots of gaps which the parents have towards their children, by the way. So the children or the young adults, they have lots of complaints about their parents. What's that? The parents they have less concern about the youth. So that means they do, for example, they are complaining that, first of all, they don't give us the chance to be in charge in the church, to serve in the church, and they are saying also, they are complaining, they do everything in English. So this is mainly the priests. Only the church service and the lesson and the preaching of every Sunday is mainly in Ge'ez or in Amarinya. So the youth and the young adults, they have this complaint. So the priests and the church father and the church administration, by the way, especially in the diaspora, should give. So the English ministry or the youth ministry should be encouraged. These days, as far as I see, there are lots of parish churches in every state, or almost in most cities, we can say in US. They are trying to start the youth ministry in English, but it's just a start point. But it should be, more and more. There are lots of questions, so that kind of thing is, the priest should give the ear, and the parents should, give the eyes and the ear, and try to be part of the solution. So the solution can be supporting the youth, the young adults, so that they can be part of that. So they can help us, by the way. They will be part of the solutions, not only part of the complaints, part of the problems, but also the solutions. So the older generation have big responsibility to design the future service. Listen, our kids will be the next of the future parents. So unless we coach them very well, so it will be really difficult for them to be, as expected. So the deacons should be very qualified deacons, and the future priests, and the future merigators. So we need to teach them, coaching them, and training them. So the deacons and the youth in the church ministry, they should give adequate, and they should give their time, and there should be dedication, and after all, there should be determination, so that they should determine on that. So there are lots of challenges, but the parents and the priests should hear the youth, and they can make them ready for to shoulder the responsibility in the near future. So I think that is.
That's very well worded. I think I completely agree.
Yes,
that's very needed.
Very needed. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And yesterday, I know that the book signing was in DC, Qudus Debre Mehret Qudus Mikael Cathedral.
Yes.
Yeah, and let's hear a little bit of testimonies from a few people. Also in English. Let's give that a few minutes, and then we're gonna come back and talk a little bit about the day, how it was, how it went. From your perspective, we would like to hear that as well.
We get a lot of benefits from receiving this book. First, we have a place where we can get resources from, especially when we have questions about the church. Reference for when we talk to other people at school. This is something that is readily available for anybody to buy, whether you're in the church or outside of the church. So the fact that this is readily available, you can find it online as well. It's just almost like a dictionary for the church. So if anybody has any questions, they go to this and they'll have a lot of questions answered. So it's very important to have this.
So you can find and read a book which is written by Coptics or other scholars, but this one is different. It's prepared by Tibetan Orthodox scholars or Tibetan Orthodox liqa'ant. So what is the difference? What would be the difference by two books?
Personally, in my experience, I would often read Coptic books whenever I have any questions. This is because this is only what is available to us, and for the first time we have a book that we can relate to in terms of traditions. Egyptians, Copts, they all have different traditions which they mention in their books, which leads to other questions about our faith, because there are some Anona that is different with them and us. And for the first time we have something that is catered to us, for us, by somebody who is in the church with us. So that is a huge thing for us, that we can use and refer to in anything in our lives. So
What do you have the message for your friends who have a question about their religion and finding a book written by English language?
I would tell them to start from here. I think especially because this book says history, worship, and doctrine, and it's basically summarizing a lot of important topics that would be lots of books that would require to summarize all of this information all in one book. So just by starting with this cost me $30, and it's honestly more valuable than that. And so if anybody has questions, I would refer them to this book because you won't get this anywhere else. A book that will summarize everything that you need to know, especially foundational wise.
Well, I haven't read the book yet, but I'm very excited to read it. One thing that pushed me to come for the book release is the fact that it's a history book. I really do like history, Ethiopian history, but like I said earlier in Amharic, I feel like a lot of the writings that we have about the history of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and just Ethiopia in general are usually written by professors in large universities, and they're not made accessible to the common folk, or they're not in a language that is easily understood. So now I feel like this book being easily accessible to anyone, you can come to a church and purchase it, or you can purchase it online by contacting Qasis Dr. Amsalu. I feel like it's going to make our understanding of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church a lot better, especially for the youth who may feel disconnected and may not have a source to learn about our history and the history of our church, because it's a very rich history that I think is something that we don't speak of. There's a lot of topics in here that you probably wouldn't even be able to learn at church unless there was a very knowledgeable person who studied the history of our church. And so I feel this book is going to be very useful. I'm very excited to read it and to see what Qasis Dr. Amsalu has to say. It covers the history of the church, even from the Old Testament times, and it also covers the liturgical worship and the traditions of our church, the rites of our church, as well as the doctrine. I believe he spoke with a lot of theologians, and himself worked very hard on doing the doctrine part as well. So I'm very excited to read this book, and I hope anyone can go and purchase it. I believe it's very useful if you want to get a deep understanding of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church history and how that has got us to where we are today.
As you know, there are a lot of books which is written by other scholars or Coptics church scholars and different. So, what would be the difference between those books and these books?
Well, I would say this one is unique because it's written through an Ethiopian lens of understanding. So it doesn't only incorporate the general Orthodox theology and tradition and history, but it also includes the theological ideas of Ethiopian scholars like Saint Yarid, scholars like Abba Giorgis Zagasicca, who Western scholars or scholars of the other churches may not recognize to the same degree that we do. So I feel like this is an opportunity or a way for people to learn more about the Ethiopian Orthodox Church in a very Ethiopian lens, as it's being written by an Ethiopian church scholar versus if it was being written by like a Coptic church priest or a Coptic theologian.
Do you have a message you wanted to send to your friends or your relatives to read this book who have any questions or who are trying to find books in English? So you can just send a message through this broadcast.
Well, I would just recommend everyone to purchase this book and to look into it. History is very important. I think sometimes people neglect history, but history is what has brought us to where we are today. So understanding your history will then allow you to continue as well.
This is also a worship or doctrine, not only history, so it's a lot of
It incorporates all of the topics. So not just history, it has the history, it has the doctrine, it has the worship traditions and the history of those as well. So it covers all of those topics to give you a very broad and general sense, and even to details of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. And I would just recommend everyone to go out and purchase it.
I originally heard about it online, and then I asked Qasis Amsalu to send it to me, and they were able to send it to me.
So have you read this book or just bought it today?
I've started reading it. I've read the first 2 chapters so far.
Okay. How was it so far?
So far, it's really good. I got a lot of insight, especially about our church history, how Orthodoxy or how Christianity itself came into Ethiopia. It taught me a lot about saints, a lot more. I got a lot more information about Saint Yarid, for example, about all the things he did for our church, aside from, the compositions that he did. It taught me a lot more about his day-to-day struggles.
What are the benefits you will get from this book, do you think?
I think many benefits, not only just history, but just a better understanding of our church, understanding of our fathers. I think, like my brother earlier, Diakon Jonathan, had mentioned, a lot of our books, especially the ones written in English about our church and even just Ethiopian history, are written by people who are not of the faith. So a lot of it, I remember seeing like 101 Miracles of Mary, which is a translation of Tamara Mariam, written out in English, and I read the preface, and it mentioned like witchcraft and things like that. And it's if these kinds of books are written by people who don't quite have an understanding of our church, it's very easy to get led astray and misinformed. So I think it's very important to have our fathers, for the information to come straight from them.
So before you get this book, what was your challenge to finding a question, or you might be a question about Ethiopian Orthodox Thought of Church, right? So before you getting this type of book, what was your challenge?
So when I was studying in university, I studied anthropology. So anthropology has a lot to do with history and kind of an understanding. And before I graduated, I had to do a senior thesis, so like around a 40-page paper. And I was really wanted to do it on our church history or anything around the church. And my greatest challenge was finding English material. A lot of it was written in Amharic, so it was like hours and hours of translation. And because of the lack of resources, or at least my lack of knowledge of the resources, I had to change my topic and do it on Kenya. So if I had a book like this, I would have been able to write my thesis. But I'll be sure to share this with people who are kind of in a similar predicament.
Okay. So did you recommend for your friends or relatives to read this book?
Absolutely. I would recommend this for anyone. I think this is also very important for like Abuna Gorgorius or anyone who teaches younger children. This kind of gives you a base to show them. And like it's very easy to read, as I said. So even small children would be able to understand the language.
And now we are back. Let's talk a little about the testimony. How was it in your perspective?
The book signings and event and the testimonies went well, and people, they're saying that they are happy, and especially the English, the youth were just speaking English. Since the focus was there, I think they were very happy, and the church fathers, including His Grace Abuna Fanuel, the Archbishop, and he gave a very powerful message for the youth, for the parents, for the priests, so that the parents should teach their kids.
Yes.
And the youth and the deacons, they should empower themselves by reading this kind of books and other things, so they should get ready for the service. So I think I got this very inspirational, and it's very good. And testimony from the church fathers, the parents, the youth, it was excellent, and then I was really happy, and I thank God for that. Yeah.
Is there any specific feedback or review that you remember that you think may change your perspective, or maybe want you to do more? It gives me the power and enthusiasm to do more and more and more. Yeah, so there are lots of things. Okay, if I would know this, so it was very much and very mandatory to continue this kind of stuff. So that is the thing. So we need to continue, and I get an assignment for me. So it gives me an additional, spiritual duty to do further and more. Yeah. So what's your hope for the future coming generation, for the young generation? What's your hope? There are lots of things, honestly speaking. To be frank, there is a hope, very positive, and it continues very well. But there are also threats. Unless we work right now, unless we just corrected some, signals, there are signals which should give attention, from the parent side, from the church father side, and even for the young adults side as well. So if we try to give that gap and try to avoid and try to be determined, and that will be corrected, and that means we need to work more and more. Listen, our church is nearly 2,000 years old. It's a very oldest church almost in the world. Listen, our Christianity, as we said, came to Ethiopia
in 34 AD. That means, can everyone imagine, before St. Paul was converted,
Yeah.
the eunuch of Queen of Candace was baptized. Meaning, Christianity was entered to Ethiopia before that, during the apostolic time. That's historical. And the Ethiopian church has great in its history. There are lots of church fathers, church mothers, and lots of martyrs in the church. And there are great bishops and patriarchs and church fathers, and lots of great church scholars in the church. This is until today and until yesterday. But when we think about future, that's a question. Are we ready with that? So we need, just like the church scholars, we need the church scholars, the current deacons should be ready for that.
Yes.
And we should equip ourselves, we should empower ourselves to be the future Merigeta, to be the future church scholars, church fathers. And as far as the church martyrs are concerned, do we have the devoted Christian, they can surrender themselves for the church? That will be the great challenge. So, but thankfully, there are lots of things, hopes are there, but we need to give much power so that we can be empowering ourselves. So that will be my perspectives and my hopes as well.
Thank you. And I want to mention what you wrote about prayer. And in regards to that, since that is something that we need to do like daily, you wrote in details in regards to how we should pray, what we should pray, like how many times we should pray. And this will be, let's see, page 97, 98.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, this, thank you very much. This question is about, this chapter is about the worship part.
Yeah.
So prayer is one of the forms of worship according to the Ethiopian Church. And prayer or tzalot is, very important and very, it should be, by the way, there are, for the worship, there are times which are specific times we need. And there are lots of things which we do it 24 hours if we wish. So prayer, as far as the personal prayers are concerned, we can do it as far as we do. But there are canonical hours.
Yeah.
The canonical prayer hours are just 7 canonical hours. As you mentioned, there are about the canonical hours, as mentioned in page 98. There are 7 canonical hours. These 7 canonical hours, there are 2 reasons. Number one, they are related with how God created the world. And there are lots of things God created within these 7 hours. That's one reason. The second reason, there are reasons for these 7 canonical hours. Our Lord and Savior Christ Jesus has suffered, and He just was crucified. And there are lots of things. So for example, we need to pray every day, 7 times a day. Here are the 7 hours. Remember the sufferings of the Lord for 18 hours from Thursday evening, 9 p.m. until His days on Friday, 3 p.m. That means in the morning, between 6 and 7 a.m., the 3rd hour, 9 a.m., at noon, which is 12 p.m., and the 9th hour, which is 3 p.m., at the sunset, between 5 and 6 p.m., and the bedtime, which is 9 to 10 p.m., and the midnight, 12 a.m. So these are the canonical hours, and every Christian should pray on these times.
Yeah.
But these are not the only times every Christian. So every Christian, if we just would like to become more devoted, 24/7, we can pray for this. But at least within these 7 times, as it's written by the psalmist David, right? It says that in Psalms 119 or 118/119, verse 164. It says that, I praise you, the Lord, 7 times a day, says David. So we need to pray, we need to praise God at least 7 times. This means at least 7 times. So, and this is called the 7 canonical hours of the church.
If you can also mention what prayer exactly we need to pray daily.
That's a good question. We can pray. Abatachno is one, or the Lord's Prayer is the first one, and the Wudasse Mariam, as far as the Ftaha Negest or the canonical, the church canon allows us, the common prayers, the Wudasse Mariam, the praise of Mary, and the Psalms of David. These are the church canons which everyone should pray for this. So the Psalms of David we know 150. So if time allows us, we can pray all 150 books of Psalms within a day. Okay, if not, every day the church allocated like for example, lots of from Psalms 1 to 30 for Monday, they are allocated times, and from Psalms 31 to 60 for Tuesdays, and from Psalms 61 to 80 about Wednesday, and it continues on that. So preferably, if not, there are lots of, I think, specific verses of Psalms or chapters of Psalms specifically for the morning, specifically for the evening, and specifically for the noon. So there are lots few. So it's written, all this written in the Ftaha Negest. So preferably all this. Okay, if we finish this, and if we like to add some prayers, still can add. But we cannot substitute all this. We have to finish with Wudasse Mariam, Praise of Mary, and Psalms of David, and others, right? So not substituting this by others, the others prayers. So this thing. Okay. When we come to the modes of prayer, we can pray it orally, we can pray it by using the Bible or the books, or we can see, so it doesn't matter, right? So we can pray verbally if we know it, and you can use it the prayer book. So that's acceptable according to the church canon as well. So
I hear some people also listen to it if they don't have the time. Let's say in the morning they have to rush out. Some people listen to it. What do
during
you
rush time.
What do you think?
That's a good point. Well, it's good. Still, their mind is just doing the prayer. They may drive, but they can listen. They can without distraction, without talking side talks or so. If their mind and body is just ready for the prayer, it's good. But preferably, the prayer should be in a very still mind, and we should still stand. And there are lots of postures of the prayer, by the way, and that's the recommended prayer type, right? Prayer postures. But if we are in rush time, there are lots of pressures which it can't allow us. So that's okay, but not always, right? Yeah. So we need to give time. So listen, we are worshiping God. So if we are just worshiping God, that means the maximum homage we need to give to God, the Lord. So that should be, in a full. So our mind, our body, our concern, everything should be fully concerned with the tzalot, with the prayer. So there are lots of postures of the prayer, which is mentioned in the book, by the way. But if we are busy, and if just something which just forced us, but still we need to finish our prayer, as you said, we can drive, we can do something, but still we can do the prayer, even orally, or we can listen to that. That's also an option.
Yeah, and some of our listeners may be complete beginners to prayer.
Okay, yes.
What advice do you have in terms of praying? Because all the things that you just mentioned may be overwhelming.
Yeah, overwhelming. Yes, you're right. Okay, they have to start just praying from a batachmi, or that's the first thing. Yep. If they start praying with full devotion, with full heartedly, the Lord's Prayer, batachmi, that's the first and the powerful salot, by the way, the very powerful salot. It's not. It doesn't matter, by the way, what we pray and how many hours we devote. No, that's not the way. That's not the thing. What matters is we need to give attention, and we need to ascend our mind to God. So we need to have connection, full connection with God in devotion. So if they finish abatachnoi, they can read at least one chapter from the book of Psalms, like the book of Psalm chapter 22, እግዚአብሔር ይረኤኒ, or the Lord is my shepherd. And there are lots of, for example, Psalms 5 during the morning time, Psalm 62 or 62 or /63 in the morning time. In the evening time, Psalms 140/141 in the evening time, and also Psalms 190 or /91 also the evening time. So we can pray if we are in rush. But if we have time, as I said, there are lots of multiple prayer books and prayer chapters we can devote.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you
good.
very much.
Thank you.
And one more thing that we can mention is the Abnett ትምህርት ቤት. If you can just explain the importance and the purpose. I know you went more in depth about it on page 41, 42.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a very important question, and I think which one of the unique contributions of this book, I would say, is chapter 2. It's about Abnett School. Most readers, especially the young school, the youth, they may less be aware of these Abnett schools. I deliberately use it Abnett school. I just used Abnett. I didn't translate it in English deliberately, because the reader should ask, what's this Abnett? What does that mean? And I do, of course, in the introduction, in the body part, I just translate on that. So the Abnett schools foundations of the church, I would say. Okay, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church is the country's oldest and most vital religious institution, has decisive in state formation. The Abnett schooling, which is known as የቆሎ ትምህርት ቤት. So I added another term, Ethiopian term, right? The ቆሎ ትምህርት ቤት. What does የቆሎ ትምህርት ቤት means? Traditional church school. So የቆሎ ትምህርት ቤት, ጉባኤ ቤት, Abnett school means the church school or the traditional church school, which is foundational for modern school in Ethiopia, by the way. So the Abnett, without having the Abnett school, honestly speaking, the Ethiopian church cannot exist without. Why? This is a bold statement, I know, but without having the Abnett school, we cannot imagine the church can. What does that mean? The Abnett school is everything for the church worship, for the church service, for the church life, and for producing what? The church cantors, the church merigeta, the church priests are the products of the Abnett school, everything. So what does the Abnett school, and how it's just given? In Abnett schools, there are lots of roles in the church, and the rules are the backbones of the church, So, for example, in the church, there is ቅዳሴ, for example, in the worship. Okay, to celebrate ቅዳሴ, the ቅዳሴ lesson is given also in the Abnett school. The celebrant priests, the deacons, the assistants are the products and fruits of the Abnett school. If we come to the Yaridic Zema, Saint Yarid and his contribution, the Yaridic Zema is the Abnett, it's given also in the Abnett school. So the Abnett school is what we call it, just a kind of factory, or without that, there is no product of the church school, and there's no service. That's what. And I would say in the page 41 and 42, there are key factors of the Abnett schools. There are key factors. There are lots of things, but I just mentioned here about 5 important key factors of the Abnett school. What are these 5 factors? Number 1, the Abnett schools are service-oriented. In the Abnett school, every student or every Abnett tamari or every church father or every church listener, or student or disciple is ready for the service. Listen, he is in the church lesson service, but he's not only to attend the lesson, but he's also giving the service in that specific parish by the leading of the Merigeta or the Yeneta. So that's the church-oriented service. That's the first factor. The second feature is about, when we think about the Abnett school, it is languages are mandatory. Ge'ez is the language of the Abnet school. So that's why we claim, the church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims that Ge'ez is not a dead language, by the way. It's another argument or another topic for another interview maybe. But this time, you know, the Ge'ez is still alive in the church, right? Still the functional language. It's an active language. Thanks to the Abnet school, the teaching, learning language is the Ge'ez one. The Qaddas is given in Ge'ez. The Zema is given in Ge'ez. The Trigwami is given in Ge'ez. Of course, the Trigwami is the Ge'ez, in Ge'ez, and the Andimta or the explanation may be in Amarinya, but still without having the Ge'ez, it's impossible to understand. So Ge'ez is still there. For Qine school, Qine is what we learn from Ge'ez is just by Qine. Qine is Ethiopic philosophy, so is on all Ethiopian philosophy is given in Ge'ez, by Ge'ez, for Ge'ez. So the church service is just given. So Qine or just Ethiopic poetry is Ge'ez department to learn Ge'ez in all its all philosophy and rhetoric formation. And there are lots of things. So Ge'ez is very mandatory. And for Akwakam as well. So the chanting, the wording, or the text is Ge'ez. So without knowing Ge'ez, there is no shortcut to be aware of the church. So Ge'ez language is very important. That's the second one. The third one is memorization. You know, the church school, everything is encouraged in memory. We use rote memories. So we learn Wuddase Maryam by heart. We learn, Tzolote Zoter, Wuddase Maryam, the praise of Mary, the lights of the gate, the Anqatz Abraham, Yewuddis Wa Malaakt, all this, the Melka Maryam, all this, they are the ቃል ትምህርት. So every student, every kid or every child should learn that by heart. Can you imagine if you try to calculate in pages, more than 100 pages, by the way, more than that. So every child starting from age 4, age 5 until age 7 or 8 or even younger, every child is learning all this by heart, by the way. This is just the beginning. It's not the end, just the beginning. Then the advanced lessons will be also continued. The ቃል ትምህርት is the ዜማ ትምህርቶች, right? The ውዳሴ ማርያም ዜማ, መስተጋብ፣ አርባዕት፣ ሰለስት፣ ክስተት፣ አርያም, all this should be by heart. ፍጹመ ድግ, over everything. Then can be also not only this, also memorization, especially very important to memorize the word in Ge'ez, then the meaning in Amarinya. That's called especially very important, mandatory in the Trigwame ቤት or just in Andimta Trigwame or መጽሐፍ ቤት. So memorization is very important. In ቅኔ ቤት memorization is very important. The teacher or the student may give a rhyme or just 2 lines or rhyme or ቅኔ or ጉባኤ ቃና or so the students or the ጉባኤ thing, they will just catch that rhyme, that line just by hearing just one. And the very very clever students, which is called mazrat, they will just try to retell without repeating that thing. So that's a very very active memory. So that's very important. Another thing is apprenticeship is very very important in the Abnet school. And the fifth one is the spiritual discipline. So there are lots of things, and I'm happy you asked me. So for further, I think discussion, it's good to read chapter 2 in there. Yeah, that's good.
For sure. Thank you very much for that explanation.
Thank you.
Is there any last words that you may have?
Well, the last word is, we need to understand the church. We need to know the church, and we need to keep and we to love the church. As Saint Yarid says, Hallelujah, ወሪድየ ብሔረ ሮሜ ሬክዋ ለቤተ ክርስቲያን አይመርክዋ አፍቀርክዋ ከመህትየ ረሰይክዋ. Saint Yarid saying that, meaning, we need to leave the church the church life. We need to live the Christian life in a true way. So we need to love we need to understand, we need to see the church, we need to learn the church, that means, and we have to know the church, we have to learn the church, and we have to love the church. We need to surrender ourselves. So by seeing, watching, and by learning, and by giving ourselves to devote to the church, it's our duty and mandatory to be fully devotedly to give the full devoted church service. So my message is just, everyone should know his church or our church, her church. And we have responsibility to know our church, and it's not only enough to know and to learn, but we need to give ourselves, to be devoted out to ourselves. So every member of the church, starting from the youth, the adults, young adults, the parents, the old generation, the future generation, we need to unite and we need to worship the church, because we are one and we are the members of one church, and we need to collaborate for the service of the church. If we miss something, we need to fulfill, and we need to fill the gap, so that our church fathers will give us the blessings, and the younger generation or the future generation will be empowered to be substituting the church fathers as well. So to be in that responsibility, the responsibility or the shoulder start today, and we need to empower them, to enrich them, and to be flourishing the church, and to give very, very devoted life, and we need to surrender ourselves. Number one. Number two, there may be challenges always. Mm-hmm. We don't forget this. So there is no service without challenge. So we need to endure the challenge. We need to surpass. Remember, we should be victorious. We should win that challenge. How? By prayer. How? By giving the saint's life as our model. So they had different challenges, but thank God they was just successful, and they just are just doing these great things by the power of God. So we need to pray just like Saint Paul said. So we need to be empowered. We need to do everything, not by ourselves, but not by our capacity, by the power that we get from our Lord. So we can power. So we may face challenges or problems, but do not be frustrated. So we need to give thanks, and we need to ask Him, and we just pray and ready for a service. So that will be, I think, my message, and thank you for this time.
Of course. And where can we find this book? Where can the audience find this book? I think they can contact the author, as it's mentioned in this address, number one. Number two, it is just will be distributed in the Amazon, by the way. Okay.
So everyone can Google from Amazon by the author's name. So it can be found. So thank you for this interview.
Perfect. Thank you very much. This was a very fruitful and insightful conversation. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you, great. Thank you very much.
Of course. And this concludes our program. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, may God be with us all.